Peace. We are back once again with Masterminds with Brother Shem. I'm your host, Brother Shem, and I'm excited to get back to the podcast. It's been a minute since I've uploaded through the podcast platforms. Of course, I've been active on my YouTube. You can check me out on my YouTube channel, Shem. Still, you can go out and check my website, shemel.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. I appreciate everyone's support. Definitely want to thank everyone who's been continuing to support me throughout this journey. Also, I now have my Patreon reactivated. It's always been there, but I pretty much, in a nutshell, really just activated it. I uploaded 3 new videos. You can go to my Patreon for those who want to support me in other ways. Go to my Patreon. That's patreon.com/Shem_L. That's SHEM_EL. And you can get new content there. Content that you won't find anywhere else. Also, some of that content you can get on my YouTube channel if you decide to join the membership on my YouTube channel. So, without further ado, I want to really get into the subject matter. I'm really excited for this. I'll probably be doing a series on this because when I come across new information, I want to share with the people just outright, and that helps me. One of the best ways to learn is by teaching. I found that out a long time ago. So there's some new findings. It's not new information, but it's new discoveries and rediscoveries and reconfirmations of certain things I've already discovered in the past, came across, and I want to share it to the people so we can kind of elevate the conversation and elevate our consciousness in ways that are possible now. So with that, as always, I always like to start off with our favorite book, Circle 7. For those who are not familiar, get familiar. But, those who know me know I always go and like to refer to this in terms of metaphysical information, because this book has a lot of metaphysical information if you're able to dig in and pull in those nuggets. So with that, I'm going to go to chapter 2 of the Circle 7, and I'm not going to read a lot. I'm just going to read this section here, 2 verses, and it simply says, verses 12 and 13, it says, "We measure time by cycle ages, and the gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. An age has passed, the gate unto another age flies open at the age touch of time. This is the preparation age of soul, the kingdom of Emmanuel, of Allah and man." So, focus being on gate to every age, which is the subject matter and which will be the subject matter of this series. Gate to every age. So, that term gate has been used in multiple writings. It's used in multiple ways. Of course, we know it in its most mundane sense as being a door, like the gate to a fence, gates to a castle, and things of that nature. However, from a metaphysical standpoint, we're dealing with portals. Gateways are portals to realms of consciousness, to worlds of existence, universes, multiverses, a host of things of that nature. So I want to read first from a couple of pages from my book that I wrote called How Many Days Are in the Circle. And then I'm going to get into a document, a government document that was released some time ago but is not known by many people. Interestingly enough, I pulled this document from, I'll say it, a CIA website, believe it or not. And it's just interesting how the spirit guides you to this. I actually came across a glimpse of this document. It was touched on in a TikTok video. This TikTok video happened to be part of a longer video that was sent to me, or the link was sent to me on Facebook. Shout out to Brother Leos Bay. But when I saw that section, I'm the type of person, I like to get the documents. Like a TikTok does not suffice as thorough research, although TikTok does serve its purpose. And I recently got on TikTok. I see the value of it now. I didn't before, but due to the fact that a lot of eyes are on it. But long story short, I saw it, I caught it. They really took a short glimpse of it. I said, I need to read that. I need to look that up. I looked it up, did the research. There's a book on it. It's based on a document. I pulled the document, and I will be reading from that document. It's a government document dealing with the subject matter of what we're going to talk about. And it gets really, really deep. So, that being said, let me read from page 64 of my book, How Many Days Are in the Circle. It is important to note that in the 21st chapter of the book of Revelations, the 12 gates are divided into 4 sections, each section containing 3 gates. These sections were distinguished by the directions of north, south, east, and west. There is another good book entitled 12 Gates, a Spiritual Passage Through the Egyptian Books of the Dead by John A. Rush. In this book, he speaks about the Amduat, right? Now, just to get into this, give some backstory to it. Before I got into that aspect, I talked about something known in physiology known as a ganglionic center, which is a neuron, a nerve cell that is an electrically induced cell and possesses and sends information through electrical and chemical signals. Now, what happens is these ganglionic centers, right, were described by certain metaphysicians as 12 gates, and they're located in various sections of the body, right? So we know that those clusters of nerves, those neurons, are, processes information just much like the brain. So they're processors, mental processors, to put it in short, And the reason why I'm saying this in this context, again, keeping into a gauge to every age, those 12 gates are corresponded to what's known in the Bible as the 12 disciples, the 12 tribes, etc., right? So, the question is asked in the next page of the book, what is the Amduat? And the answer is the Amduat, literally that which is in the afterworld, also translated as text of the hidden chamber, which is in the underworld, and book of what is in the underworld, is a significant ancient Kemetic funerary text of the New Kingdom. Like most funerary texts, it is found inscribed on the inside of the pharaoh's tombs for reference. However, unlike other funerary texts, it was only reserved for pharaohs or high nobility. So this enumerated and named the occupants of Duat, which was divided into 12 regions, thus 12 gates, a gate to every region, gate to every age. We deem a milestone in the journey of the race. And you're going to see why I say that. So basically, in the ancient Kemetic system, Duat is the realm of the dead. Duat is the realm of the god Asar, which is now called Osiris, and the residence of the other Neteru or deities. It is the realm where people's souls went after death for judgment. Though that was not the full extent of their afterlife. So, to be clear, we're talking about the concept of the traveling of the soul body after the physical body is no more. Okay? So keep this in mind. All right? It is also the area through which the sun deity Re or Ra travels from west to east during the shadow hours, which you call night, and where he fought Apep. Okay, Apep or Apophis was an ancient Kemetic deity who embodied chaos and was the adversary of light and Ma'at, which is another way of saying justice, order, balance, truth, right? So, to keep in mind, just keep it short, this journey of the soul takes place within the time span of 12 hours. This measure of time is represented by the circle. The sun must reach 4 directions of north, south, east, and west within that circle, within that period of time. This completion perfects man, which is represented by the number 7. Okay? Okay, this is one of the deeper meanings of the symbol known as the circle 7. Okay, because a true 7 is actually a closed round shape with no open breaks in it. And the symbol that most people refer to in the Moor Science Temple as the circle 7 is actually congruent 4 arcs. So it's 4 congruent arcs, which are positioned. They don't intersect or touch in any way, and they're positioned in such a way that it gives the impression of the circle. Thus, those 4 arcs and the gates to that. So it looks, so in a sense, you're looking at what is the appearance of a circle with 4 gates at it, north, south, east, west. Just to give you the concept. So now I'll stop there. So why am I even saying that and reading that, right? So when you think in the context of the circle, 360 degrees, that symbol has many meanings, but one of the symbols it relates to is eternity, because every point in the circle is its beginning and its end. Okay? So it denotes infinity in that context. Now, keeping that in mind, keeping in mind the symbolism of what we're talking about in these old ancient texts that speak about these gates and the traveling of the soul, which is intelligence, okay, to go through this journey. The gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. An age has passed, the gate unto another age flies open at the age touch of time. So you're dealing with space-time continuum. So now, let me read this document for you. I think you will find interesting. So, when I pulled up this document, the first thing it said that it was approved for release in September 10th of 2003. That means it was approved to be released to the public. Okay? But the original document itself was dated June 9th, 1983. So they kept this hidden for 20 years. I want you to keep that in mind now. And only recently is it really flying around on the internet like this. Like, I've never seen this document before. And it's almost 2023. So we talking 40 years almost. So it says Department of the Army, U.S. Army Operational Group, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, Fort George G. Meade, Maryland, 20755. It has the seal of the Department of Defense on it. It says subject, analysis and assessment of gateway process. And it's addressed to Commander, U.S. Army Operational Group, Fort Meade, Maryland, 20755. And it has a first point to it. Number 1, you tasked me. So whoever's writing this is addressing it in this form. And we may get to exactly who is referring to down the line, who actually wrote this. Number 1, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. So let's stop there before I read on. So there's a thing called the gateway experience. I would strongly suggest that you research that. Google the gateway experience. And if you look that up, then you already figured out what we're speaking on to a degree. But this is the document. So, again, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. So you have something called the gateway experience. They're not doubting that it works. They just want to find out how and why it works. Got it? Okay. The gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. Here's the next sentence. It says, frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business. Initially, based on conversations with a physician who took the gateway training with me, I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Itzhak Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. Now, who is this guy? Bentov. Okay? If you read up this guy, Itzhak Bentov, he was an Israeli-American scientist, inventor, an author, and a mystic. Okay? He has a number of books, but one of the books that is commonly known is called A Brief Tour of Higher Consciousness. Okay? You can look up his books on Amazon. You can pull it up. He was born in 1923. He died in 1979. So this guy is saying that he had to resort to looking at the biomedical models developed by this Israeli American scientist and mystic, right? Now that would be interesting, because most scientists are not viewed as people who get into mysticism. Okay, I digress. So I'm just going to put things into context, and we're going to get a little deeper. So then I found it necessary to delve into various sources for information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature and functioning of human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemisphere synchronization technique employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved recourse to theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the time-space dimension and the means by which expanded human consciousness transcended in achieving Gateway's objectives. Finally, I again found it necessary to use physics to bring the whole phenomenon of outer body states into the language of physical science to remove the stigma of its occult connotations and put it in a frame of reference suited to objective assessment. So this guy just basically said he had to do a whole bunch of stuff just to not sound like he was just dealing with the occult, new age, and it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. He had to be able to translate the type of language that was used pertaining into things that is not even dealt in the scientific world. Out-of-body experience, out-of-body consciousness. That's not something in the general scientific community that's widely discussed and disseminated to the public. So he's having a conversation with the military, saying what he had to do just to be able to present something to them that it wouldn't be just dismissed as some pseudoscience. Because what happens a lot with this information is that it's easily discredited as pseudoscience. That's a bunch of pseudoscience. No such thing as chakras. That's there's no science. No, there's nothing scientific about it. This is nonsense. It's BS. So yet and still, the government was asking him to try to explain it in scientific terms. He said, I had to resort to all these different books. And the first person he dealt with was an Israeli-American, the works of an Israeli-American scientist and mystic. This guy, the guy that had already passed form physically, was a scientist and a mystic at the same time. He had to resort to that guy. So it gets real interesting to give you kind of the scope of this. And I just, that's the first paragraph of this whole statement. Now, as I will proceed to go in further, let me just read this. Let me read part 2. That was part 1. Point 2. I began the narrative of briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation, so that their objectives and mode of functioning could be compared in the reader's mind with the gateway experience as the model of its underlying mechanics was developed. Additionally, that introductory material is useful in supporting the conclusions of the paper. I indicate that at times these related techniques may be useful entry points to accelerate movement into the experience. So he's basically saying that the techniques of hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and the likes could be useful in elevating that experience. Again, much of which is dismissed as pseudoscience. Again, he concluded that this can actually help accelerate it. Now, I want to bring a point. I spoke early in the initial point about brain hemisphere synchronization. I had the opportunity, and if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, I did a number of episodes with the brother Neb Tahaka, and he spoke about something known as hollow mind perceiver. And the hollow mind perceiver deals with just that. The hollow mind perceiver deals with the actual subject matter of synchronizing the right and left hemispheres of the brain, okay, through something called the hollow mind perceiver. And it is said that the hollow mind perceiver is telepathically imprinted within your brain. It's not a physical organ, so to speak. It's like a chip, but it's telepathically imprinted. So it operates at another frequency that you couldn't just observe if you was just to cut up somebody's skull and do an autopsy or something like that. This is the realm that this particular individual is getting into when it deals with that. We're going to speak some more about this in the second half of this episode. And trust me, as I get deeper and deeper in this, it's going to get deep. So the more further and further along we go in it, the deeper it gets. And keep in mind, the stuff that I'm reading is a government document that was put out in the year 1983, and it's been kept locked away officially for 20 years. And you're just now hearing about it on this podcast almost 40 years later. So just keep in mind the level of sciences and metaphysics that has been dealt by certain circles that has not been let out to the public, but they want me and you to think that it's bogus. That's interesting, but we'll get more into that into the second half. Now, I want to just note something very interesting to note the level of synchronicity in what I'm speaking on right now. At the time of this recording, it came came to my attention that as I was recording this, there was a post. Shout out to Blue Pill, an Instagram post that he put out. In the Instagram post, the title of it is called "A New Brain Model Could Pave the Way for Conscious AI." Right? AI meaning artificial intelligence. Okay? And so it speaks about a new model for the brain. A new study presents a new neural computational model of the human brain, which might shed light on how the brain develops complex cognitive skills and advanced neural artificial intelligent research. So this is done by the University of Montreal in Quebec, in Canada, I should say. Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute. But the thing that got me was the quote in particular by one of the professors involved in this study. And I'm going to read the quote. It says, "Our model demonstrates how neural AI convergence highlights biological mechanisms and cognitive architectures that can fuel the development of the next generation of artificial intelligence and even ultimately lead to artificial consciousness." So I have said there's a difference between intelligence and consciousness. And those who advance in consciousness or elevate in consciousness, enlightenment, what have you, they recognize this. There's a difference between intelligence and consciousness. A person can be highly intelligent but not highly conscious, because intelligence, the root word of intelligence is intel. Intel is information. That's input, output, data. Consciousness deals with awareness. To be conscious, to be aware of your environment and the vibratory frequencies within that environment and how they interact and how you interact with that, right? For you to assess what it is, where you are, what you're doing, what you have to do to adapt to what's going on, as they like to say, in real time. So they're looking to not only just have artificial intelligence, they're scientists looking to have artificial consciousness. So when you look at something like this, which is recent in this day and time, and go back to how far back as far as the 1980s, and I would dare say it was before the 1980s when they was dealing with this, that they were trying to figure out these different states of consciousness. Then you see how deep this thing gets and how a lot of this information is just kept from us for whatever reason. But this is very powerful, you know. Like Rakim said in one rhyme, somebody must have told you a little knowledge is dangerous. To have certain information and to be in the know, for some people, they consider it a threat, right? But we're in the information age, so they say. But yet and still, a lot of things that are put in the algorithm that we're exposed to really dumbs you down, okay? So this is not one of those things, so we're going to go ahead and continue. So I'm going to go to point 3 in this document entitled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. That comes from the U.S. Army. It says, point 3, Niels Bohr That's first name is Niels, last name Bohr. The renowned physicist once responded to his son's complaints about the obtuse nature of certain concepts in physics by saying, "You are not thinking, you are merely being logical." That's the quote. You are not thinking, you are merely being logical. The physics of altered human consciousness deals with some conceptualizations that are not easily grasped or visualized exclusively in the context of ordinary left brain linear thinking. So, to borrow Dr. Bohr's mode of expression, parts of this paper will require not only logic, but a touch of right brain intuitive insight to achieve a complete, comfortable grasp of the concepts involved. Nevertheless, once that is done, I am confident that their construction and application will stand up to the test of rational critique. Part 4.4. Paradoxically, having gone to such great lengths to avoid trying to render judgments based on an occult or dogmatic frame of reference, in the end, I found it necessary to return, at least briefly, to the question of the impact of the gateway experience on common belief systems. I did so because, although it was essential to avoid attempting to render an assessment in the context of such systems, I felt that it was necessary, after having completed the analysis, to point out that the resulting conclusions do not do any violence to the fundamental mainstream of either Eastern or Western belief systems. Let's stop there for a minute before I conclude. So, he said, the paradox is that while he went through such a great length, he went out of his way to avoid rendering the conclusion, coming to these conclusions based on the occult, right, or any religion concepts. He found it necessary to test this experience, test this process, what's known as the gateway experience, on common belief systems: Christianity, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, New Age, Buddhism, the whole Hinduism, the whole works, right? So he went to say, does this conflict with that? Evidently, he recognized that even some of the most logical thinkers deal with some form of belief. If that was not the case, churches would not be rampant across this country. You got what I'm saying? Churches, mosques, synagogues, all these temples, they wouldn't be as abundant as they were. Not only in this country, in the United States of America, but all over, right? Why am I even saying this? Why is this even important? Because the common person who you deal with, even in these circles, in the military and stuff like that, they come from a religious background for the most part. And even if they discarded a lot of that dogma, there's still remnants of that in their subconscious. So they'll still go back to that default programming. You see what I'm saying? They'll still go back to that. And we've seen cases of that happening. People being in certain secret societies and they jump out and say, oh, okay, because that's, Jesus told me something was wrong with that. They learned all types of stuff. Learned about UFOs, aliens, all stuff, and then I feel like God is trying to give us a message. They still go back to that default programming. It's just what it is, and that's not to demean or speak down upon, be condescending to belief systems, because it does play a role. It does play a role, but I'm just speaking on that. So, and he's saying that he found that it doesn't conflict. It doesn't, there's no conflict against it. And he goes on to say this: unless that point is clearly established, the danger exists that some people will reject the whole concept of the gateway experience in the mainstream belief that it contradicts and is therefore alien to all that they hold to be right and true. That was saying. If you're going, that has to be established, that what we're getting into does not dismantle your belief that you hold so dearly to. Because if you hold it on to that just by human psychology, and you're introduced to something as new as this and different, you're going to reject it. You're not even going to give it an attempt to see the reality of it, right? He had to make sure that was verified. Okay, that's the fourth point that he made. Point number 5, which is the last point. This study is certainly not designed to be the last word on the subject, but I hope that the validity of its basic structure and of the fundamental concepts upon which it is based will make it a useful guide for other USA INSCOM personnel who are required to take gateway training or work with gateway materials. This is signed Wayne M. McDonnell. That's McDonnell. That's McDonnell. And I believe he is it says LTC, MI. Then it says Commander, DETO. Whatever that means. I don't know about ranks or anything of that nature. But the point I do want to point out is that there are personnel in something known as USA INSCOM. Remember, I said USA INSCOM. What is that? That is United States Army Intelligence and Security Command. Remember what I said earlier? Didn't I say this is Department of the Army, U.S. Operational Group, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command? So it's telling you that there are personnel in the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command who are required to take this training and work with these materials. So this is a government, this is training issued by the government to intelligence, to U.S. Army Intelligence. Let that sink in for a minute. I haven't even gotten into the training yet. Okay? I haven't even gotten to the training. And I can't get into all of the training by the end of this episode. But we're going to dive into it. So let's start. Let's at least start. The gateway experience. Okay. What did I say starting off? In the circle 7, we measure time by cycle ages, and the gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. An age that passed, the gate unto another age flies open at the age touch of time. So this is called the gateway experience. Brain hemisphere synchronization in perspective. Number 1 is introduction. In order to describe the Monroe Institute technique for achieving altered states of consciousness, known as the gateway experience, involving brain hemisphere synchronization or hemisync, the most effective way to begin is to briefly profile the basic mechanics which underlay operation of related methods such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. It is easiest to effectively describe what gateway is by beginning with a short description of those associated techniques that share some common aspects with the gateway experience, but which are nevertheless different. In this way, we can develop a frame of reference at the outset which will provide useful concepts to explain and understand gateway by comparison as we proceed. So, point 2, which is the first related method, is hypnosis. According to the theories of psychologist Ronald Stone and the biomedical engineering models of Itzhak Bentov, who we mentioned before, hypnosis is basically a technique which permits acquisition of direct access to the sensory motor cortex and pleasure centers and lower cerebral, that is emotional portions, and associated pleasure centers of the right side of the human brain following successful disengagement of the stimulus screening function of the left hemisphere of the brain. So that's a real deep scientific definition of hypnosis. Okay? Now, the left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the mind. It fulfills the function of screening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to allowing passage to the right hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere, which functions as the non-critical, holistic, non-verbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept what the left hemisphere passes to it without question. Consequently, so it's basically saying that the left brain is a receiver of what is input in the right brain and processed through the right brain in this definition. Some would argue about that, but one thing we know is that the right brain is more what they would call more logical, like you said, linear, right? Deals with parts and segment and construct things. It compartmentalizes things. And the left brain, and the right brain is holistic. Left brain is more logical, right brain is more holistic, more artistic, etc. It goes on to say, consequently, if the left hemisphere can be distracted either through boredom or through reduction of a soporific semi-sleep state. External stimuli to induce hypnotic suggestions are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere, where they are accepted and acted upon directly. So if you can bring a person into a semi-sleep state, right, and we're going to get into those different states, beta, alpha, delta, theta, delta, etc., right? You bring it to that state, then you can introduce outside stimuli, external stimuli, and it's not challenged by the logic of the right side of the brain, the right hemisphere. The result may involve an emotional reaction originating of the cortex and so on. Okay? So I hope y'all got that clear. Okay? I'm going to keep on. It says, both the sensory and the motor cortices of the right cerebral portion of the brain contain a sequence of points known as the homunculus. That's HOMUNCULUS, which corresponds to points in the body. And they have an exhibit for that. They actually have a diagram for that, okay, in this paper. Stimulation of the corresponding area on the cortex causes immediate response in the associated portion of the body. Consequently, induction of the suggestion that the left leg is numb, if it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory cortex, will result in an electrical reaction being generated, and that will induce the feeling of numbness. Okay? So you put in a suggestion under hypnosis that, you know, your leg is numb, this, that, and third. If you're able to put that in under the hypnotic state, then automatically you'll get that person will feel that, because it's not challenged by the right side of the left side of the brain. I'm sorry, the left hemisphere of the brain is not challenging that statement. Okay, is being received by the right hemisphere. So they saying. So really, when they're really speaking about subconscious, the conscious and subconscious. They talking about right hemisphere. Left hemisphere, right hemisphere, but really they're speaking about conscious and subconscious. The subconscious mind is operating off of this, and the conscious mind, so to speak, is shut down, or is being bypassed, I should say, where it's not challenging the external stimuli. Okay, so that might make it a little easier to comprehend. You're dealing with consciousness, the subconscious mind and the subconscious mind. Okay. Similarly, the suggestion that the person is experiencing a general feeling of happiness and well-being would be referred to the appropriate pleasure centers located in the lower cerebral portion or in the cortex of the right hemisphere, thereby inducing the suggested feeling of euphoria. Finally, suggestions such as ones that informs the hypnotic subject that he enjoys enhanced concentration of powers or powers of memory would be responded in the right hemisphere by accessing unused information storage capacity normally held in reserve as a result of left hemisphere selection and control processes. This aspect will become significant in the context of the gateway process, when attention is given to examining the way that hypnosis may be used to accelerate progress in the early stages of the gateway experience. Let me stop right there. This is very important. It's a very important point to drive home. This guy is basically just telling them that hypnosis can be used to increase mental power and memory, fundamentally by giving a suggestion, and is saying that the right hemisphere of the brain, if you want to use the term subconscious, replace that with subconscious, you can, because I'm going to show you why it accesses unused information storage capacity. So there's sections of your brain that are unused in terms of storing information, right? You know, we've all heard that concept, that saying, you only use 10% of your brain, right? Okay, cool. Put a pin in that. This is saying you can access the other 90% through hypnosis. That 90% is held in reserve, is blocked, is gated off as a result of the left hemisphere selection and control processes. Or if you want to exchange the left hemisphere for the conscious mind. The conscious mind is filtering what you access in the subconscious mind. Okay? That's why you keep hearing these things about manifestation, about whatever you believe you can achieve. Visualize yourself doing this. Take these affirmations, the meditations, focus, visualization, law of attraction, all these different things deals with this concept of accessing the portions of your mind, or portions of your brain. The brain and the mind are two different things. We'll get into that. The brain is the organ. It's the processing organ. The mind is your mental body is more expansive. It's not just confined inside your skull. Okay? But we'll get more into that. But the point being that all these different things you hear now about manifestation and etc., etc., deals with the principle, scientific principle of you being able to unlock that gate and opening up, right? An age had passed, an information age now, the transformation age. The gate unto another age flies open at the age touch of time, right? The gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. You accessing these portals of your mental capacity, and it's saying that hypnosis is just one means to do it. Because remember, he's talked about other related techniques in comparison to this thing called the gateway experience, right? This is very important to grasp. So this is what was being used back in the 1980s, at as far back as the 1980s, for people in the Army Intelligence Command to access higher mental processes. What are those processes? We'll get into that into some later episodes, what actually they were doing. Some of y'all already know, but I'm going to stop right there. But I appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll get more into this conversation in upcoming episodes. But until next time, peace and love.